shall be discussing on the topic housing in Nigeria, setting an agenda for the Buhari administration. Today we have a special guest. He is an estate surveyor, a facility manager, and of course a politician. He is no other person than Mr. Muyiwa Olumiluwa. It's good to have you, sir, on TVN Business.
Thank you very much, Shirley. It's always a pleasure having TVN in the office. Thank you, Chuendu. Well, the Buhari administration, when they came in, the plan was to construct 2 million housing units in the first year, then 1 million housing units every year, till the end of the first term. But I'm sure you're aware, the issues we had as a country, the recession, and the financial meltdown, which was brought about by the drop in oil prices, so they could not meet that target. But they're making a conscious effort to revitalize, to put life back into the housing industry. I'm sure we have a massive housing deficit in Nigeria. Some people are saying it's 17 million housing units, some are saying it's 22. But as at this year, at the last time the Vice President, addressed a conference of, housing captains, it was estimated that Nigeria has a housing deficit of 20 million housing units. So that means if we're going to get over that, we have to be constructing a conservative amount of about 1 million housing units per year, till we can meet up, with the deficit. But like I said, the country had many ills, and when you're in a situation like that, though housing is one of the basic needs, of every human being, shelter, but there's some other needs that supersede housing. So the country had to tackle those issues first, then look at housing. Presently, I'm aware that the presidency has put together, let's say, an institution called FHF. That's the Family Homes Fund, and they intend to put in 100 billion naira every year into that for the next 5 years to try and bridge the gap on the housing deficit. So I believe the Buhari administration, though incapacitated, due to the recession in the country, they've been making a conscious effort to bridge the deficit of housing in the country. Well, it's not healthy by any standards in any country. It's not healthy. True to what you have said, it seems that like it's been relegated to the background, because Nigeria has one of the lowest home ownership rates in the world, even in Africa. Nigeria has a 25% home ownership rate. Kenya has 73% home ownership rates. South Africa has 56%. So you can see that Nigeria is far behind. So truly, we have a lot of work to do. It's not healthy, it's not right. But I believe with the current strides of the present administration, because the first thing, excuse me, to solve a problem, you have to take cognizance of the fact that you do have a problem, which this administration has taken into consideration. And I believe, they're making a very, very conscious effort, to surmount the problem we have. This is the first time in a very long time that the Federal Mortgage Bank has taken, the forefront. Right now, the Federal Mortgage Bank platform was digitalized recently, to make it more responsive to the needs of, the housing needs of people and all that. And presently, there's actually a scheme. Before, Federal Mortgage Bank, because it was funded by the NHF, that's the National Housing Fund, they were concentrating on civil servants, because most of the contributions are from the salaries of the civil servants. But now they're extending it, to the private private people. So if you want to buy a house, all you have to do is apply to the Federal Mortgage Bank, and depending on the cost of the house you intend to purchase, they will give you a loan. In some cases, if it's like 5 million naira, that's the cost of the house, then you don't need to pay any deposit. If it's as much as 15 million, then you might pay a 10% deposit and they will fund the mortgage for you. But right now, like I said, the government is making a conscious effort to make housing more affordable and more accessible to Nigerians. Well. Now we haven't started development actually. We're estate surveyors. We're still, we project manage some of these housing projects. We project manage them, but we don't directly go into construction. But in our own way, being a player in the property industry, I mean, what we have, at the back of our minds is that, we have to try to ensure that housing is as affordable as possible. A lot of people say estate agents are the ones that make housing, costly, unreasonable. No, it's not true. I mean, the money doesn't go to the agents, it goes to the landlord. So what they do is follow the dictates of the landlords. But I believe as a person, like Randy said, I'm a politician, so I have that thing about making housing affordable for all Nigerians. I have it right here in my heart. So we try to make sure, to the best of our abilities, that housing is made affordable, to anybody who passes through us. Being a consultant, you can talk to your clients, try to keep the prices, the rents as reasonable as possible. But we intend to go into development very soon. It's one of the phases, it hasn't started yet, but we intend to start very soon. And when we do, we'll make sure that housing will be at the barest minimum possible for everybody who passes through us. Yes, the private sector, like in almost every other sector in Nigeria, right, has taken over, because if the government doesn't build houses, people build houses for themselves. You understand? And right now in Nigeria, the housing sector, the real estate sector, is the 6th largest contributor to the GDP of the country. Though it's below 10%, but I mean, it's something, worth mentioning. So the private sector has actually, taken the driver's seat in providing housing, but to a very large extent. To be honest, I can't say government has really, been helpful, because now, how can government be helpful? Well, it might be in terms of, making building materials affordable, because most of the building materials we use are imported. And in the list of 44 items banned from the Forex funding, building materials are there. So most of the building materials are imported, which will come at a cost. So it's quite expensive. Now, provision of land is a major aspect. You can't build in the air. You have to build on land. Getting land is very expensive and very difficult as well. And you see, land and funding go hand in hand, because you can't go to a bank and say, please give me money. They'll ask for your C of O, that's your ownership. If you don't have that, a bank will not be stupid enough to give you, any funding for a project on a piece of land that doesn't have a C of O. And C of O's don't come that easy. You can't apply for it today and get it tomorrow. You can apply for it and not get it in the next 3 years. In some cases, even longer than that. So the bureaucratic bottlenecks in government has been, acting as a bottleneck, in the provision of housing, via the private sector. But the Nigerian private sector, we're very resilient. We always do our best. So I believe the government can do more. if they look into, acquisition of land, the procurement of building materials and things like that, funding, I think it will make things much easier for the private sector.
Alright, we shall be going on a quick break, and when we return, we shall continue. Stay with us. And in case you're just joining us, we are still with the estate surveyor, the facility manager, and of course a politician who has been doing justice to the questions.
Well, most of these houses, because people have been asking these questions over and over and over again. You see, most of these houses were built using what I'll refer to as slush funds. What do I mean by slush funds? Money that was illegitimately acquired. Stolen money. Let me come down to the layman's level. Now, when you want to launder money, by laundering money, you want to make dirty money clean. What do? You put it an investment. So when the investment starts yielding, people say, okay, that's the source of this money. So instead of keeping money in the bank that can be traced, people buy property or they build property. Now, that kind of person, because the money does not come at a cost, because for a businessman, if I go to the bank and I say, please give me 1 billion naira, and they give me 1 billion naira, I build houses, I will not keep them empty. Why? Because I have to repay my loan. So I want to get them filled, occupied as quickly as possible. But for someone who just got the 1 billion naira just like that, he has no pressure, he has no bank on his neck, so he can leave it empty. Because as far as he's concerned, his money is safely laundered and sitting down there. You understand? Most of these people are not businessmen, so they can afford to keep the houses empty. Now, at a point in time, I heard governments started seizing these properties. But in all honesty, it's a very, very difficult task, because you have to trace the ownership. You have to prove that the person is a thief before you seize the property. But when you want to put it in the market, you have to give it out to estate surveyors to handle. So it's a very long process. So that is why, you have a lot of houses in the market. But if governments can actually legislate, right, where rents can be kept at a certain level, something like, the price control board of before. In Lagos State, they tried to do something like that. They said landlords cannot have no rights to ask for 2 years rent. But do they really enforce it? I don't think so. But it's there, hovering in there somewhere. So if government can actually look into that, kind of put a ceiling on rents, then it might help occupation for those empty houses. Because you have a lot of empty houses. I have a lot of people who are homeless. And those that even have homes can barely afford to pay for those homes. So it's going to take a lot of work, because it's a double-edged sword. If government steps in, right, it might discourage investors. Now, I borrow money from the bank, I build my house, so I'm able to fix my rent and say this is how much money I want. Because I have to amortize my loan with the bank and make a little profit. But if government steps in and said, okay, this house rent cannot exceed 1 million naira, then by the time I do my math, I might be making a loss. So why build the house in the first place? So it's a very delicate balance. Government has to be careful, but all the same, something has to be done about it. I think, from what we've already been discussing, what I want them to do is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right? That's, putting money into mortgages. Nigeria is the only place where, well, maybe not the only place, but Nigeria is one of the countries where anything you own it 100%. This wristwatch I'm wearing, I bought it, it is mine.
Yeah.
In the UK, you can pay deposit, then pay installments. You see them driving brand new cars every day. Why? It's a credit economy. Most of those cars don't belong to them. I have friends who use cars that cost as much as £40,000, £50,000. But maybe the down payment was maybe £5,000. But if you see a man driving a 200 million car today in Nigeria, he bought it 100%. You understand? So we have to, make that gradual move from a cash economy to a credit economy. And, along that line too, mortgages will be, home ownership, will be affected in the sense that people will be able to acquire mortgages. People who own houses outside, Nigeria, let's say in the Western world, they didn't buy these houses, cash down. You have a £200,000 house. Maybe you pay £10,000, 5% in the UK. I lived in the UK for a bit, so I know a little bit about that. You might just pay 5%. Then the rest, you pay it over time until you finish paying. And in some cases, if you have, an urgent need for money, what do? You take a second mortgage. You refinance your mortgage to get some of your equity out of it, and you can do something else. But in Nigeria, everything is cash. So what I want the government to do, or rather to improve upon, is the mortgage industry. You have all sorts of PMIs, primary mortgage institutions, that are actually doing nothing. Now, some PMIs charge as much as between 11 and 20% interest. It doesn't make sense. Then why is it a mortgage institution? Commercial banks charge you between 11 to 30%. The only institution that actually gives you what is reasonable, a single digit interest rate, is the Federal Mortgage Bank at 6%. But how easy is it to get money from the Federal Mortgage Bank? It's not that easy. I mean, when you have 200 million crowding in on the Federal Mortgage Bank alone, how many applications can they process? How much money can they, make available? So, when the primary mortgage institutions are actually doing the things they should do, and well, it will take government stepping in to make that happen, then things will be much easier. Home ownership will go to as much as 60, 70, 80%. And maybe it will move from number 6 on the GDP list to maybe number 2 or 3. Or possibly, well, maybe not number 1, because oil will always be there at number 1. Maybe oil number 1, agri number 2, then maybe housing number 3. But I believe if the government, really intensifies the effort, things will be much better for us in Nigeria. All right, thank you. I mean, people have always asked that question. But you see, now, we have what we call the formal sector and the informal sector. Now, the pepper sellers, the recharge card selling women, the people selling yams, some of the farmers and all that, they form the cluster that we call the informal sector. Now, it is difficult for government to actually help them in the sense that they cannot even be tracked. Do you understand? You can't track them. You can't track their income. How much does Mama Chichi that's selling pepper, how much does she make in a month? These people don't even fall into any tax bracket. You understand? So they're a statistic that you cannot actually determine. Now, in a situation like this, what can they do? They should form clusters, cooperatives, unions of some sort. So that one, registered, will now be a body that can approach government for a loan. You understand? Yes. With that, if you have a session of Abuja market women, they form a cluster, a cooperative of some sort, they now apply for a loan. Now, they can now sit down, maybe acquire a piece of land, then subdivide it, then start building houses. Then they can actually, get the mortgage to develop those houses. That way it can be done. But on an individual basis, it's not possible. So if they can come together and actually do that, then the government will be able to assist them. But without that, there's no way to track them.
That's the much we have for you today on TVN Business. I'm still Chiwendi Osisego, and I want to really appreciate Mr. Muyiwa Olumuyiwa for doing justice to the questions. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Chiwendi. It's always a pleasure being on TV.
Thank you. Bye.